Good evening, everybody. My name is Vani Subramanian, and I welcome you to this evening, and which I'm sure is going to be very, very exciting for all of us. I'm from Reframe, the organizers of today's event. We are also the people who have, we run this fellowship program called the Genderalities Fellowships, of which we are introducing our latest set of fellows and their fantastic writing. So we're very, very excited about this evening, and thanks everyone for joining in such a timely manner that we can actually get going without any further delay. Just two lines of a background for anyone who's new to Reframe and all of this, that we've been running this fellowship for about 5 years and have had 30 fellows actually working across multiple art forms, from podcasts to films to performances to writing to zines, all kinds of things, installations, mixed media work. But after about 4 years or so, we felt that we didn't have so much substantive writing. There were many, many exciting pieces of work which were on gendered lives and living by women, trans, and queer folks, uh, but not something that we felt was very strong in the writing department. So, unlike all our other fellowships, our last call was specifically for writers and writing across any form, any kind of creative writing. And so we are very excited today because, as you will discover as the evening goes on, our four writers have worked in very, very different forms to bring out this latest work of theirs. And we have someone to speak to them who also we are very glad to have on board. I want to introduce Shals Mahajan, our host and discussant for the evening. Welcome, Shals. And Shals is, as many of you know, is a writer, is an activist, but likes to define themselves as a layabout, part feline, somewhat human, genderqueer person who lives in Bombay, but I think mostly in their head. They worked on a lot of issues of gender, caste, sexuality, communalism as a teacher, trainer, activist, and enjoy doing workshops with university students, folks working on social justice issues, women returning to literacy, queer and trans folks. In fact, they've done some workshops with us on writing in our workshops called Gender Kala or Hum. And in their own capacity, they write children's books. They've written the amazing Reva and Prisha, the Timmy series of Timmy Entangles and Timmy and Rizu, and have also co-authored No Outlaws in the Gender Galaxy. So welcome, Charles. Delighted that you're here to have a conversation with all our four writers. And I know they're also really looking forward to having the conversation with you.
Thank you, Vani and Reframe. Thank you for having me here. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation with the four writers. They're produced some amazing work. So yeah, cheers to the evening. Let's hear from them first.
Thank you, thank you. And on that cheerful note, I'm going to first introduce Anam Kazmi. Anam, if you can put on your camera, that would be great. Anam is a writer and editor based in New Delhi. She has a postgraduate degree in English literature from the Delhi University and has worked as an editor for reputed publishing houses, think tanks, and academic journals. Her writing draws on life experiences and attempts at bridging the gap between the personal and the political. Her work predominantly revolves around the themes of identity, home, and belonging. And you'll see much of this in Anam's writing to this that she will share with you this evening. Her articles have been previously published in newspapers and online magazines such as the HT, the Quint, and Writing Women. Anam will be sharing with us her first collection of essays called No Country for Muslim Women. Welcome, Anam.
Thank you, Vani. Thank you for that introduction.
And can I ask you to introduce your work and share a little bit of it with us?
Yes, of course. So hi everyone. As Vani already mentioned, my name is Anam Kazmi and my project is called No Country for Muslim Women, Reclaiming Spaces and Reimagining Solidarity. It's a collection of 7 personal essays that deal with what it means to be a Muslim and a woman in the India of today, where Islamophobia and misogyny are increasingly normalized. Each essay in the collection is centered around an object, which is something ordinary, like a lunchbox, a grave, bunch of papers. And through these objects, these essays have larger conversations about identity and belonging. Each essay begins with my personal experiences, or it begins with a particular incident that happened. But then these essays branch out into becoming larger conversations about the way Muslims and Muslim women, especially, are perceived, and how we are often reduced to this or that. And these essays are an attempt to challenge those dominant narratives and reductive binaries. Um, the, the piece that I'll be reading from today, called The Kagas, uh, delves into how certain objects can also be used as tools of exclusion, and how they can um, legitimize or delegitimize one's very existence.
So, Anam, can I ask you to? So, the format of this evening, friends, is going to be that, like Anam just introduced her work, we'll ask Anam, can you just flow right into reading from your piece, and then we'll go on to the next author. So, we'll introduce you to the four pieces, and with a little jhalak from each of the writers, and then we'll start the conversation. So we'll start with Anam. If you can also just read a little excerpt or the section you want to read from Kagas, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Vani. 4 years ago, on a seemingly ordinary day in February, a riot unexpectedly turned up at my doorstep. I remember logging into my Twitter account that evening and seeing the words steady violence trending. To my rising horror, the communal violence being referred to in the tweets was happening not too far from my home. For the next hour, my family and I were glued to our phones trying to get more information. Filled with anxiety, we contemplated our next choice of action. Should we stay put and wait until things got better, or err on the side of caution and leave the neighborhood? Ours was the only Muslim colony in the area. The masjid constructed at the entrance of our street gave our religious identity away, and made us and every other Muslim family in the neighborhood more vulnerable. We had also heard through our colony WhatsApp group that some right-wing thugs had been scouting Muslim houses in the area earlier, which added to the climate of fear and our panic. While my family prepared for the worst-case scenario, I was
There's a
frozen.
little trouble. Anam, you might have to go back a sentence. We lost you for a second. Yeah?
Oh, all right, all right.
After the WhatsApp group.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll continue. While my family prepared for the worst-case scenario, I was frozen into complete inaction. I could not stop thinking about how utterly bizarre the situation was. How had I suddenly become a protagonist in one of those spine-chilling horror stories that I'd only read about in newspapers and history books so far? It was only when my phone started buzzing with calls and messages from my friends who were concerned for my safety that it finally sunk in. We had to leave if we wanted to live. Home was not home anymore. Our safe haven had turned into a potential graveyard. As I joined my family in their search for the cargoes, those official documents that were of utmost importance to our existence, I found my thoughts drifting to Abu, my father, an exceptionally orderly man who used to be in charge of keeping track of all the paperwork in our household. He was the one who used to meticulously put all documents in files. Ever since Abu's sudden death 4 months ago, none of us had been able to keep up with his system or been able to muster up the courage to clean the cabinet, whose drawers were filled with vital paperwork. Abu had kept everything safe and organized. He had known how important certain papers could be. The other thing that Abu had known was the horror that a riot can wreak on a city and its people. As a young man, he had witnessed the 1984 anti-Sikh riots in Delhi, and the memories of the mindless violence had forever stayed lodged in his consciousness. 36 years later, as I frantically opened and shut drawers and cupboards, I wondered when, if ever, the 2020 Delhi riots would be dislodged from my mind. This was just one of the many questions that I didn't have an answer to at that moment, or even today. The other big question that remained unanswered was, what do we take and what do we leave behind? Which papers were important enough to be saved, and which ones were inessential enough to be left behind? And if it was only the papers that carried official institutional stamps that qualified as significant, then what about other papers that held memories from a lifetime? What about those papers, the ones that belonged to my father, his old journals, the notes he used to write, the lists he used to make? What about those childhood photographs with handwritten labels at the back that lovingly captured every birthday, every celebration, every milestone? For me, losing those inessential papers would result in a loss of self that no officially issued covers could ever restore.
Thank you for that excerpt. And of course, always wanting, I mean, it does what an excerpt does, right? Which is just want you to keep reading. But unfortunately, we are in an online event, and we thought we'd just give you all a taste of how, through these various pieces that each of our writers are writing, they're giving us windows into their world, into their life experience, into what it means to be to be them or to be like them. Because across our forms, people are writing in fiction, they're writing in semi-fiction, they're writing in personalized essays like Anam. So this is just the beginning. Thanks a lot, Anam. I'm now going to introduce our next writer, Diti. They go by the pronouns he and they. Diti is a queer transmasculine researcher, writer, and activist who strongly believes that their research and activism are intrinsic to each other and uses their writings to express, process, and protest. After a post-PhD plot twist, Diti has found solace in the enchanting world of fiction. Diti also finds joy in doodling, exploring the world, savoring diverse cuisines, crocheting through their anxieties, and embracing the warmth of a perfect cup of chai. And with that wonderful introduction, uh, Diti, can I hand it over to you to tell us um, about your writing and to share an excerpt with us?
So, hi everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Vani. My writing is called Tiposi Finds Their Wings. It is a novella that follows Tiposi, a young gender non-conforming person living in a conflict-ridden region. The novella consists of four stories and four chapters. Tiposi lives with their mother in a remote village and has just begun to attend high school in the neighboring village. Football is Tiposi's newfound love, and they are trying to navigate the complexities of gender expression and societal norms. The novella ends on a note of queer joy and resilience as Tiposi travels to a city for the first time for a sports tournament where they meet Joy, a player from the opposing team. Their friendship blooms during the brief but meaningful encounter as they share their experience of identity, self expression, and freedom. Tiposi returns to their village with a renewed sense of hope and connection, cherishing the bond that they share with Joy and the conversations that help them reflect upon their own identity. I'll be reading a little excerpt from one of the chapters when Tiposi's just started their high school journey. So, high school began, and every morning Tiposi cycled to football practice along the quiet, winding roads of the village. The air was crisp and carried the earthly fragrance of dew-kissed soil. Birds chirped unseen in the trees, their melodies harmonizing with the soft rustle of leaves, stirred by the gentle breeze. Shafts of golden sunlight filtered through the foliage, painting patterns on the path ahead. The cool breeze kissed their face and ruffled their hair. The open roads felt like an open field waiting to be conquered. For Tiposi, the road ride was an embrace of freedom. They were always amongst the first to arrive at football practice, eager to get started. Now that they had earned their place in the team, the dynamics within the team were beginning to shift. The coach was keen to not just develop the individual skills of his players, but also build them as a team. In order to do this, he used skillful coaching techniques. He frequently shuffled the players' positions. He wanted all his players to be adept at playing in various positions. The defenders were often asked to take the position of the striker or center forward, while forwards were sent to defend. It kept everyone alert, made them adaptable, and more importantly, fostered a sense of mutual respect and understanding amongst the players. They learned to appreciate each other's strength and the challenges of different roles. Gradually, this strategy started working well for the team. It also worked well for Tiposi personally to settle into it. The boys, who had once played against Tiposi, began to see them not as an outsider but as a vital part of the team. They began passing the ball to Tiposi without hesitation and cheering them on when they scored a goal. Although Tiposi continued to feel a little out of place during post practice conversations, something had shifted. There was a growing sense of belonging. Communication on the field had improved significantly. Calls for passes, strategies during drills, and even the occasional cheer over a well executed play slowly became the norm. Tiposi could feel the change. They gained confidence and became more comfortable playing with the boys. Bablu even passed the occasional smile at them after practice. Even though practice was growing well, the new school continued to be a challenge for Tiposi. While the coach had managed to convince the headmaster to allow Tiposi to join the football team, many of the teachers did not appreciate the fact that Tiposi played with the boys. Moreover, the decision to let Tiposi wear track pants to school instead of the traditional mekhela chador uniform did not go down well. How can the headmaster allow a girl to come to school in track pants? One of the teachers whispered to his colleague. And play football. Another teacher joined in, his tone dripping with disdain. What next? It will be a bad influence on the girls. What will the headmaster do if tomorrow all the girls decide to wear pants and play football? Sneered another. Their disapproving whispers, though never addressed directly to Tiposi, were loud enough to reach their ears. Meanwhile, Tiposi tried to navigate school with their head low and attracting no unnecessary attention. But it was not easy. The disapproving glances, the whispers and remarks seemed to follow them everywhere. Tiposi found themselves longing for the warm, reassuring smile of Junaki Miss. While Coach Sir was always encouraging and smiled whenever they crossed paths in school, he did not have the same effect as his daughter. Meanwhile, the students in school were curious about Tiposi. They wondered who this girl was who dressed like a boy, kept her hair cropped, and played football fiercely with the boys. Tiposi once heard the girls whisper about them. Are you sure she's a girl? Whispered one of them. I have my doubts, responded another skeptically. Of course she's a girl, Renu asserted firmly, slightly annoyed with the other girls for gossiping about Tiposi. We've been in the same class since we were little. She's right, added Meenu. Tiposi is no different from us. Is it necessary that all the girls have to be exactly the same? Renu asked the other girls in class. Completely agree. Even the best of friends do not share the same interests. Look at Renu and me. Renu loves playing sports. She's one of the strongest girls in the class. While I hate even the walk from home to school, Meenu added, winking at her best friends. The girls burst into laughter, momentarily breaking the silence. Thank you.
You know, it's like each of you take us to this point and then you leave us tantalizingly waiting for more. Thank you so much, Diti, for giving us a little glimpse. And for anyone who will finally, so all of you who will finally read Tiposi Finding Their Wings, you'll find how much more this is just a glimpse into one little aspect of their life. But to continue the tantalizing tour and now to take you on a slightly different one, I'm now going to invite Sharvari Deshpande, who's a freelance artist and illustrator living in Pune. Um, they look at education in visual arts and gender studies, you know, push them to create works that narrate stories, illustrate thoughts, evoke images, and ask questions. They're interested in working with children's books, graphic narratives, and writing as a form to talk about city, belongingness, and identities. Welcome, Sharvari, and look forward to your presentation, which actually brings together a lot of your loves. And you want to talk about the form and your piece and share a few pages? Look forward to it.
Yes, thank you so much, Vani, for introducing. uh, so my writing, it's called Lost Salad and Other Notes, which is actually a lost journal of a young aspiring chef who works at a cafe. And as they try to navigate through their home and to find belongingness in their surroundings, a diary sort of becomes their way of observing, noting, and making sense of the world. As readers, what we have in our hands is this diary, which went missing a few years ago. And we as readers almost read these intimate writings in a sort of voyeuristic way, as we don't know the writer itself. So yeah, so this is kind of an introduction to my writing, and I would like to share a few pages of the diary, and I'll share my screen also. So this is a cover of the diary, and diary starts from this. 11th March 2018, midnight, 2:15 a.m. I know this letter has become so long and you would need to sit through it, but I hope you do. I'm not writing this to hurt you, of course. I just want you to know the truth about how I see myself, how I see my surroundings, and where I feel I belong. I don't just want to talk about what I have been hiding, but also our differences and all the small letdowns between us that build up into larger disconnects. I feel I have to shift myself entirely while entering our house. You might not know how much effort it needs to be who you're not. It's not great to constantly feel like you're a disappointment around your parents. Because you would of course want your daughter to be like you. I could see the efforts you were taking to buy jewelry and new clothes for me or enroll me in a dance class. I didn't understand the pressure. I didn't understand the pressures on you and even me at that time, but I can understand it now. The feeling of being a disappointment grew as the gap between your expectations and my desires also grew. I have always felt that you compare me with Tai. Tai was perfect for you. Her education, her work, her hobbies, her marriage. All of this happened just like you had thought. I'm not like her. I started feeling so confident about myself once I got over the fear of being different from others. This letter is not to tell a sad story or whatever. It's also to say how happy I am about all this and how proud I am of myself that I'm daring to share this with you. I know that whatever I'm writing here might be difficult to come to terms with. Maybe a few things you knew already. Maybe you just had a feeling about it. Or maybe you didn't know anything, and all this might be a big blow to your understanding of me. I hope we can talk and specifically discuss all these things after you read this letter. I have one question. What is love for you really? Has that meaning changed in your life? When? How? Yours? What a random and dramatic start to a diary. The previous one finished at a very crucial point, which had all the unsent letters. That one won't know the end of it, and this one won't know the start. But maybe what I actually want to say lies in between these two diaries. Let it be. Everything is a disjuncture anyway. Am I this fragmented self sprinkled across these notebooks? But I truly hope this letter does not remain unsent. Now let's see what all this one carries. It needs to go out to be heard. I have a question lingering in my mind. If they read this letter, will they read it in my voice or theirs? This is another page from the diary. 17th April 2018, 9:40 p.m. I just realized that I don't draw myself below my neck and above my legs, basically the torso. I avoid looking at it. But not drawing my torso doesn't really change things, does it? This is another page from the diary. This is a gajra for Sheetal Diti. I have started giving her one every time I see her. She looks so beautiful walking across the street among the office crowd in the traffic, morning and evening. Chandni had asked me once, "Tu ladka hai ya ladki?" I said, "Aapko kaun lagta hai?" She looked at me a bit longer and said, "Ladka." Tina said, "नहीं रे, लड़की है, पर पूरा समझ नहीं आ रहा." शीतल दीदी said, "क्यों समझना है? नाम क्या है तेरा? इधर आ." Since then, I look forward to meet her every time I get down at the chalk. Tina also asked, "इतना कपड़ा पहन के रखा है, कैसे समझ आएगा?"
Thank you, Sharvari, and clearly start of many conversations. And now it's timely to move to our last author of the evening, last but not least, as they say. Hi, Vihaan, and welcome to the evening. Um, we'll now look at actually something else which is structured around letters, but very, very differently. But first, a brief introduction of Vihaan. Vihaan, pronounce he, him, is an Ambedkarite queer feminist trans man engaged in anti-caste, feminist, queer, and trans movement since his student days. He runs the podcast Masculinity, Kuch Mardani Gupshup, exploring trans-masculine experiences of masculinity. His writing has been featured in Social Text, Feminism in India, Smashboard, Parentopia, Roundtable India, and more. Notable works include Reimagine, Peer Utopias, Dialogue Protest, Andolan Imaginaries, How India's Brutal Lockdown Was a Calamity for Trans Communities, and Experience of Bisexuality as a Trans Man. Vihaan's work amplifies marginalized voices, documents lived realities, and envisions futures of dignity and resistance. Um, and Vihaan, now I invite you to share sections of your amazing novel and with a little introduction of it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vani. So, during this fellowship, I had worked on an epistolary novella called Dear I. It is story told through letter by Surya, who is a young trans man. He's writing letters to his mothers and sharing his journey of growing up in small village, his struggles about gender identity, and later being forced to leave his home to live his life on his own terms. And also, he's talking about how he is navigating his challenges around gender, caste, and social expectations. I will read one of the 20 letters from this novella. This letter's name is Forgiveness. Date 22nd September 2022. Today was a quiet Sunday. I stayed home, watched TV, and even took midday nap. It was evening. In the evening, it started raining heavily, and I made myself a cup of hot tea. Sitting by window, I watched the rain pour down. As I sat there, I suddenly thought of our village and how things used to be when it rained. Whenever it rained, we had to run around the house, putting utensils under all the spots where water leaked through the roof. It was always a mad rush to stop the whole house from getting wet. But it was something we all did together without even thinking. And then began the work of bringing the cows back from the farm. I still remember how we had to hurry to bring them in before they get caught in the storm. It felt like such a rush back then, but it was just part of our life. Do you remember those makeshift raincoats we made from old bajra sacks? We used to wrap them around our heads and bodies, hoping to keep the rain off, even though we always ended up soaked through. There was a certain adventure in it. It felt like rainy season had its own rhythm, with us always planting or sowing. And then there was chikla, the painful infection on our feet from being constantly wet. It was though tough to deal with, but we pushed through it. The monsoons were never easy. It was very important for all the villagers as our next year's plantation is depend on it. As I was thinking about rain in our village, I wondered, do you still do the same running around during the monsoon? Are you still placing utensils under house leaks and rushing to cover everything on the farm? You are getting older now, and I can't help but worry how it must be for you. Do you still manage to do all that by yourself? Has Bapu finally managed to get the house repaired? Or is it still the same with the leaking loop? I remember how every year we talked about fixing it, but there was always something more urgent to spend money on. Wouldn't Bhau be older too? How has he turned out? What's he like with his wife? When I was a child, you used to tell me that rain carries away the land and earth's sorrow. It washes away the worries and sadness of the villagers, giving us hope for new crops and new beginnings. I hope with all my heart that these rains can wash away your sorrow and sadness. I hope that with each drop, you find peace and forgiveness. I have been thinking a lot about forgiveness lately. I don't know if I'm ready to forgive you or if you are ready to forgive me. My counselor says one can only heal with time, and for that, you have to forgive people who are close to you and your emotions. I have been carrying so much anger and hurt for so long, and it is weighing me down. I don't want to feel this way anymore. I want to let go the past, to move forward with my life without this burden on my shoulder. But it is hard. It is hard to forgive someone who has hurt you so deeply and given you so much pain. Even if someday I am able to forgive you, I doubt I will ever able to forgive Bapu. That will be very hard, especially since the hurt is from someone who was supposed to love you. It is hard to forgive myself for the choices I made, for the people I hurt along the way. I'm trying though. I'm trying to find a way to let go the anger, to make peace with the past. I know it won't happen overnight, but I am taking small steps. I'm learning to be kinder to myself, to give myself the love and acceptance that I didn't get from you. I don't know if you are thinking about forgiveness too. I don't know if you are ready to let go of the hurt and anger you have towards me. I'm running away. My running away must have caused you a lot of pain and hurt. You had to face violence from Bapu and relatives because of my choices. I know you have gone through many things because of my gender and my decision to leave home due to marriage pressure. But I hope that one day we can both find a way to forgive each other, to heal the wounds that have kept us apart for so long. Or you might choose to forget me forever, and perhaps that forgetting could be the healing you need, a way to find peace without the weight of my memory. Until then, I will keep writing these letters and I will keep working on myself. I will keep trying to be a best person I can, even if I am not the person you wanted me to be. Yours, Surya.
Thank you, Vihaan. Thank you for sharing that. And before I hand over to Shals for a discussion with all our writers, I just want to say that in sharing your drafts with us, in writing your proposals to us, we can have all their videos on, please. If all of you can put on your videos now, in sharing your proposals with us, in writing your manuscripts, in trusting us with your drafts, I think you taught us so much. You showed us both, rage and pain and difficulty and jhalaks into your lives, which are so complex. And yet, what we felt across it all was the deep compassion with which all of you have approached sharing a lot of this, and so thank you all for not just writing it, but for allowing us to be part of your process. And I speak for all of the team in Reframe that was privy to all of that. And with that, now I hand over to Charles. Charles, over to you and to take the conversation from here. Just a note to all the attendees. Feel free to thank you for all the love you're sending on the chat, but also feel free to write any questions, and we will be opening it up for questions and conversations after. So keep them banked and stay here and enjoy the conversation. Charles, over to you and all of you.
Thank you, Vani, and Reframe. And thank you so much, all of you. You know, listening again to the four of you here today was stunning all over again. And as I told you when I first read these pieces, it was quite a revelation for me. And it was really lovely to read them. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So, for the first question, what I'll do is, since you've read them in an order, I will ask each one of you, a little bit, and you can talk a bit more about your work, and then we will mix it up a little, and then we will open it up for the audience questions. Yes, but thank you so much again. This was so good to, hear you and hear the writings in your voice. Anam, I'm going to talk to you first, since you've read first and you've been waiting all this long, and I'm sure there's much you want to say. But I really love the way that you were able to take the form of the personal essay, but also make it both personal and analytical in a very lovely way. Now, this is one of the things that essays do. They allow us a space to be analytical, to talk about our thoughts, but our learnings, and bring other conversations into it. And what you have done is particularly great in this, that, and I also like that your 7 essays can be read separately, but when you read them together, they also speak to each other. I really like the format of them. And, just to give people an example, for example, lunchbox. The very daily object is so evocative already. The minute you start with, and you start with your very first memory of 2002 as an 8-year-old opening very joyfully a lunchbox, which you want to share, and then hearing something rude. All of us know that. And what you do, in fact, is you take us through the 2 decades of your growing up to see how much you've had to learn this hatred, this impunity with which people are saying things. People closely have also, sort of have ideas which you weren't aware of, and so all of that. So it is, of course, very difficult, but it's also written and woven in very well with humor as well. So I actually wanted to ask you about your choice of daily objects and how you sort of decided to do these. Just to give people an idea, the others are the social media post, Kagas, which Anam read from, the grave, chadar, mehendi, and the manuscript. So just a couple of examples how you chose them and how you chose to put things in this format.
Thank you for the kind words, Charles. I'm so glad that the essays were able to resonate with you. Uh, the idea for the project began with this piece that I wrote about the 2020 Delhi violence. And, when we were packing our bags quickly, and we were trying to gather those documents, I think it was at that moment that it struck me that our lives at that moment, were dependent on those documents, those few pieces of kagas. And I remember that I kept thinking about this. And finally, I wrote something about it. And that is the piece that I sent to Reframe as a writing sample. And yes, so gradually I began thinking of how certain objects in our lives, ordinary things that most of us have come in contact with, we all have had something like a precious item from our childhood, like a lunchbox, or we have all been on social media, and most of us unfortunately have visited a graveyard. So things like that, and I began to think about the significance that these everyday objects have, and the larger implications that they have in our lives. And I thought of starting these essays and using these objects just as entryways. So the essays don't revolve around just the lunchbox. That lunchbox is just an entryway for me to talk about the politics of food and the ideas of purity and pollution. Also caste prejudice as well as anti-Muslim sentiment in society. So so gradually, as I began to shape up this project and these essays, I thought that while these essays have had profound impact on my life in some ways, negative or positive, these are also objects that most people will be able to relate to, and they might also have memories and experiences which are connected to them. And I thought that that will help people realize the kind of impact small things and small choices can have in their lives as well as on other people, and show them the everyday costs of communalism and hatred. And yes, so I think that is how the idea shaped up.
Thank you. And it is, it is very much part of your essays, because that reflection takes you from the lunchbox of childhood to, standing in line and hearing somebody talk about how Muslims are and their food habits, to learning, much later about a friend's mother whom you've known much of your life, actually has told your friend to not eat there. And to come to, the Junaid incident, lynching, the killing of an old man around food, of your sister not being able to get a house. So I definitely think that in that sense, you've really used the essay form very brilliantly. So thank you. And I hope that, more people get to read your essays. Before I move on, just a quick thing, also a little bit about the way in which, because you've talked about reclaiming spaces and reimagining solidarities also. And so somewhere when you talk, say, about Mehndi in that essay, you reclaim a solidarity of a kind, in different ways. So do you want to talk a little bit about that as well? I mean, because, all of us, and in your essays, there is the impact of the hatred on everybody's lives. And when we look at an essay like the social media post, when you're talking about the Sully and Bully cases, there is a lot of pain and depth, anger as well. But in every essay, you're also doing some other things. So therefore, I thought you'd talk a little bit about Mehndi.
So that was one thing that was very important for me to talk about in the essays, because the main aim of this project is to challenge the kind of totalizing tendencies that view Muslim women as either this or that. So uh, I wanted to highlight how there are different ways in which Muslim women are resisting these kind of binaries and these stereotypes, and how they're carving out spaces for themselves. And something as simple as just drawing a pattern from Mehndi on your palms, or something which is at least seen by society as something that is frivolous, which I personally don't think is a frivolous activity. But most people will think of women gathering together to sing songs at the Sangeet ceremony, or women stitching together a quilt at the Shaheen Bagh protest, as things that are not particularly powerful in their eyes. But I think it's these things that together script this kind of resistance, and they're adding to those voices that are speaking up against the totalization and stereotyping. And I think that is also important to acknowledge that there isn't just one kind of protest. There are different kinds of protests, and protests can come from different quarters, and can manifest itself in different ways. Um, and how ordinary things like mehndi and like quilts can become tools of resistance as well. Also, I am writing as a Muslim woman, and there are many instances in the essays where I've used the term Muslim women, but that is because that is out of convenience and not because I want to essentialize Muslim women. And I want to show through my essays and through these different stories of Muslim women and their resistance and their experiences, that there are so many different kinds of Muslim women out there, and there's no one Muslim woman out there, and we all may not agree on certain things, but it's just that all of our stories need to be heard. And I I hope that through this project I can also inspire somebody else to write their own story of resistance. So yes.
Absolutely. Thank you. The complexity does come through, and it makes it very rich. And actually your voice adds to the robust voice of, many such stories that are growing, but more need to be told, and more of this. So thank you. For now, we'll come back to you in a bit, but I shall move on to Diti. Hello, Diti, and congratulations on Tiposhi. And I have lots of notes for every one of you, but I won't get to say even the littlest bit, but Tiposhi finds their wings. So first of all, what I want to share with people is the utter joy of Tiposhi finding that in, one of the projects in this Reframe Fellowships is a story for children, right? And it is for teenage people, it is slightly older children, but very much the protagonist is a young child. The protagonist, as Diti said, is a child very specifically located somewhere in the Northeast where it's fairly clear where, because of the cultural references that keep coming up. But in a conflict, so the location is very clear. And what's lovely for me as a writer of Kidlit also to read a story about a young person talking about their gender, and thinking about it and thinking their way through it and figuring it out. But at the same time, their life is very located, and the location and the people around are very crucial in their lives. So, one of the things is that Tiposhi lives in the Northeast. There is violence, there is the effect of it. Almost every family around them is affected. And at the same time, the story is about Tiposhi trying to, figure their way out. And so, Diti, how hard or how easy was it to, write Tiposhi's story with this background, which is always there, which very much parts the frame of the story, but also in some ways actually enters the story in small narrative ways as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think what has been the Reframe team's feedback, I must say, was really helpful throughout. But it was, I mean, it was slightly tough because of a couple of things. Because how do you bring the conflict in without it becoming the cliche of the conflict? How do you? So I also think a lot of Tiposi's narrative in Assamese. So how do you then, put that into another language? Um, Actually, very interestingly, because Assamese, when for example, Assamese is not gendered in the way Hindi is, right? Like for people who know Bangla, for instance, would know that you don't use gender for the self. So then, so some of those things, how do you then write into a language which is texturally different, which is in terms of syntax very different? So some of those things were difficult, and um, initially I also had this idea of making this other character Joy very central to Tiposi's life. However, I think through Reframe team's feedback, it also helped that like their context in which they are currently itself can be laid out in so many ways. And what I think became important for me is that people know people always, like, when we talk in many of our contexts, it's like कि we don't understand gender, or what is this complexity of pronouns and the complexity of like you guys bring in a new gender every day. But sometimes like you don't need to understand gender uh, to be able to be empathetic towards a person who is probably struggling. So which is why, like, the piece that I read was also very important to me. Like I was I kept going between the idea of, should I read something which is more conflict driven, something which is a more intense conversation that Tiposi is having with themselves, or a more a conversation of a centered around gender that Tiposi is having with Joy. However, like, this piece felt important to me because sometimes because of this very context, like, you don't need to have the language of gender to actually be a nicer person, right? So
Right.
you so And sometimes it is some of these little things that help us survive and make through life. Like that one teacher who just stands by you and says, Ki, like, it's okay. We'll see what we can do, right? So, uh, and like so for example there's a lot of other writing in Tiposi's life which is around ideas of menstruation, because menstruation rituals are very central to our culture. So and Tiposi is also in that phase of life where then uh, as a new menstruator it changes their life in a certain way. But also how do you then navigate some of those things, and um, also like while the stories are somehow like uh, inspired by things that I have faced in life, it is not my story per se. How do you then draw that keep that boundaries alive, and so some navigating some of these required a lot of conversations. Things like if Tiposi, because Tiposi is also not being perceived as, like, we also are so stuck in the conversation around, like, now that we have a language of gender, do we then get stuck in that language of gender ki ye trans bacha hai, which is probably not the language that this kid is has, right? And this is also that this story is also written some 20 years back when the conversations around gender were very different. So like to place this in a certain context and to be able to was, I think, a little bit of a balancing act. I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, we'll come back to a couple of things which I do want to ask you, but I actually think that this is a wonderful way. What you've done, the conflicts that Tiposhi themselves face, as a person, and I agree with you, when you don't have a language, and there are many of us who have grown up like that. In fact, there are lots of people even today who are growing up in circumstances where you don't have a language, you don't see anybody like you. But I think what is nice to see and what is great to see in the story, and because it's something also we rarely see in our lives, so many of us who've talked to each other about queer trans folks and their lives and struggles, and even other folks have known that how difficult it is, because your fight always begins somewhere within, the circles who are closest to you. And in Tiposhi's case, they come from a very there's armed conflict happening, there's the army there's violence around, and they come from very difficult circumstances. But what is also lovely about the stories is, as you said, the adults and the other people around them, even their peers, they don't necessarily understand, but they're giving some leeway to this friend of theirs or this person around them, that okay, they're different and we shall, their difference can be acknowledged. I think that's a wonderful thing. From their mother, who is working really hard to ensure that there is, food every meal, and, there is a brother who's gone to the city to work because the father died very young, and, to a teacher. And what is nice to see and very heartening to see is that they all do supportive gestures, which actually mean a lot, but they're not big, huge gestures, right? And you also, I think, in that sense, what the story does, like a lot of children's literature, capture the things that make a difference to a child's life, which adults and others can easily do. I love that also each of the other characters, even if they come in only for one scene or two, are so nicely etched. So, there's a whole question which the whole Gaon and the community discussed together, whether two of these girls, Renu, who's an athlete, and Tiposhi, who's a footballer, whether they should be allowed to go to the city to play. And so it's a question of safety and all of that, and the parents are worried. Tiposhi and Renu, of course, want to go, but so it's like the community sits and talks about it, and the kind of things they're talking about. And I think those are very lovely, because the gaon bara also, the older person in the gaon also says, okay, we must let them go, let's ensure that who can go with them. And that conversation builds. And those are beautiful things, because it's a support where, it's the person's gender is not being targeted as such that, oh, your difference is the problem, but saying, okay, this is what you want to do, let's see how we can, do this. So that's one of the lovely things about this. But what I was also asking you earlier is that what you do with the armed conflict and the, presence of the army and the police and everything, or there's violence around, right? And so you place that within the story as well. And it impacts, I think what I like is that it impacts Tiposhi's life continuously. And you build that into the narrative, even though that is not the focus, right? So I think both ways where you're doing that, Tiposhi's gender and how they're working through it is not this one singular huge thing, but how it is built into their understanding and their life slowly. And so it's about dressing, not wanting their menstruating status to become this public ceremonial thing, being able to ride a cycle, being able to play football, which allows them finally to meet another person. And so that, there could be another Tiposhi book where they meet joy, and maybe then, meet more, like, when, which is again a very queer trans thing, that you meet other people and you talk about it. So anything else you want to say about, bringing in the political situation and how you worked towards that as well?
Yeah, so I think for me, the idea of writing this book is also to not remove the context from what was very real or what is very real, but also to give a sense of hope in that chaos, right? So because uh, for me, I keep saying that I started writing because I wanted to write the books that I did not get to read, which is so for me, like I feel I also it's like a defense mechanism for me. It's a survival strategy for me that if things are not going right, I write it out as a way to manifest that things will get better. so I so like writing the narrative while placing it within the context sort of is then a mechanism to give hope to younger people who are growing within a context which is very difficult. And I mean, like, today we don't see conflict in the same, or probably conflict does not exist in the same way, but as the world is also getting more polarized, as we see in Anam's piece, right? Like, and it is only a matter of time that uh, yeah, like, we'll probably be living in a world which is so much more difficult. And then if we are to address a generation which hopefully will be able to think about the world differently, so just like instill a sense of hope, instill some sense of empathy, some sense of like the difference is not such a bad thing, right? So it is so the idea to write literature for young people was also that, to sort of then uh, instill that kind of not in a preachy way, but also to give hope to young people that and also, like, young people are exposed to so much through social media, etc. Like, of course they're absorbing, like, but what what is the messaging that that they take forward? It should not be it should not, I feel like this sense of hope allows me to survive. And and I feel like like this sense of hope will give be like a happy tingling feeling for young people, hopefully.
Thank you. That's delightful. And yes, absolutely. And you do it very beautifully in your, writing. So we'll come back to you in a bit. But thank you so much for this. Sharvari, shall we talk about your lovely work? And I was so happy that you were able to show actually your diary today, because it is such a visceral thing, It is not reading a text, it is reading a journal. And I love that, which I kept saying even when I first read and met you, that how each one of you has taken a form. And then when you have been writing and creating that, it's so much part of that form. That form also dictates so much of how the work is written and how it is being done. And Sharvari, for you, I think it was a more complicated thing. So do you want to talk a little bit about the actual writing of it and the creating of it and making this diary in reverse? I think that would be very fascinating. So let's start with that.
Yes. So the form itself is different because like when I'm also writing fictional writing, it is also not like there is no start, there is no beginning, there is no mid part, and there is no ending. So that building a narration or creating a narration was challenging. So I started with very little anecdotes of cafe and a few characters or relationship with the family and everything. But then again, we sat together and discussed how can we weave together these anecdotes and which will be the characters which come often or recurring characters or which will be the characters which just comes once or twice. So and also it's like it also starts abruptly with a
Yes.
half letter. So it also then developed as the like dominant thread throughout the letter throughout the diary was sort of this letter, which is being written, which is being rewritten, edited, and even though in the starting the writer says that it should be gone out and heard, but we don't know till the end that if the letter is given or if the letter is finished, because it feels like it's not enough every time. Like whatever additions the letter is having, it feels not enough. It's not enough. So that question is also there, like how much I want to, or how much that character wants to tell. What is like the character is scared of, or so these are also like some of the hidden things which we want to say, but we also don't want to say. Then how we want to say it? So that was also kind of challenging. And so in the process also, I wrote it on the laptop. I mean, I typed it on the laptop, and then after the so it's also difficult to fictionalize a journal because when we write a journal, it feels like it feels very seamless. Like we write, draw, we sketch, so it also like intermingles seamlessly. But creating and designing it was also a bit difficult, where when I actually rewrote it on paper, handwritten and drawings, every time I was writing on a page, it felt like maybe this part can be horizontally written, this part can vertically written, there I can maybe sketch or draw. So, and also it was difficult to see if it is readable, because even if it's a journal, we can't read everything. But I'm also doing a writing fellowship, and I want people to read it. So there's also this boundary where I want to show it, or I want it to be readable, but also I want it to be like handwritten and like some kind of effort for the writer, for the reader to read. So yeah.
Beautiful, because actually it is. When you start reading it as a reader, you are looking, from the very first cover that you showed today, and when it starts, you really get into the journal mode. And to make it more complicated, very clearly in the very beginning, while in the letter, the protagonist tells us that I'm not trying to make, an easy narrative for you. There's going to be no singular narrative. There's disjuncture. There are questions I have of you, the questions I have of myself. And it is in that sense also a journal, a diary is a very personal sort of space, but it is being shared. So it is being created. So one of the things I find very amazing is that to successfully use the format, but to actually create it and curate it in this format, completely, and still leave that room for all these disjuncts, this disjointedness, the fragments, and yet they do make sense. They speak to each other. But there's also things we'll never know enough of, For example, I love the title Lost Salad and Other Notes, because is the salad lost? No, the salad recipe is right there. I don't know what is lost, but there is a sense of loss in other ways. So there are things which are whimsical, but they speak to each other. So in that sense, it really works. And the illustrations, the images, clearly there is the sense of this person, So the one of the was that you showed today with the feet and the photo, the image of a photo from a younger self. I think there is so much that they add to it also. And also the other people. I think that we haven't, had time here to do that, but I'd like people to know that there are other people who make appearances. So there are discussions, there is a Patil Kaka who lives across, who loves to cook and is a person in the kitchen. But when the protagonist meets him elsewhere in his office space, he's a very different person. There are the pressures of marriage which come in different ways, about an intercaste marriage which is not allowed to happen. And so there is also all of that. So it is about negotiating personal spaces, public spaces, semi-private spaces, and how a self makes sense of them and of themselves. So I think it really does that very beautifully. And one of the things, for example, which I feel, so if there is a journal which starts mid, way and ends at some point where you're not very sure whether actually the letter was actually given or that conversation which it was supposed to happen did happen, So in that sense, there is also no sense of closure or, restraint. There is a sense of knowing something and not knowing a lot. So also, makes one feel that, do you think there'll be another journal from this person? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, when I was for me also, this in this fellowship, I tried to write a longish fictional piece for the first time, and I also enjoyed, and it was also challenging to also depart from my life, or to depart from autobiographical sort of thing, and to jump into a fiction. So, but I really enjoyed it, and I felt like whenever I was writing in my diary as Sharvari, and I also felt that maybe this can be also fictionalized.
Right.
Or yeah, I mean, I felt like I can continue writing this different journal of this person, maybe prequel, or maybe like
Yeah.
before the journal, or like after,
Yeah.
yeah, one more maybe. But yeah, I mean, I am hoping.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it does give it that. Yeah.
yeah, and it was also really interesting to write in a way that it's not it's not about the past, it's not about the future, it is about the present, because the person is writing in the present. So that fragments also seem like very immediate, or on that day. So that was also interesting to write for me.
Yeah. Thank you. Very lovely. We'll come back. Vihaan, let's talk about your piece as well. But thank you, Sharvari. I hope we have time for questions, because I'm sure the audience has questions. Vihaan, I find your piece very amazing and very stunning. So it's a series of 28 letters, starting from 12/9/2017 to 5/11/2024. That's a long period of time over which these letters have been written by Surya to his mother. And the title is very simple, but each of the letters themselves have also a title each, and they are also very telling. And I actually really like the fact that they had this. But the question I'm coming to you, Vihaan, is that Somewhere in Surya's life, these letters are written to his mother, whom he clearly knows. And there is this sense of break, which is very final seeming. At the same time, she is the person who's so important that there has to be conversation and this has to be done. And the way Surya is doing it with these letters is also where he's also doing it at a period where he is also coming more and more into an understanding of himself. He's very clear what his gender is from the very beginning, but to be able to be himself, to be able to find his place in the world, he's also doing that simultaneously. And these letters are, as I said to you earlier, that somewhere they are written with a very unflinching sort of honesty. There are a lot of, very clearly you're looking at all the emotions. And yet, as Vani said earlier, each of the writers have written with compassion as well. And so have you. And the one you read today on forgiveness, right? And that comes somewhere in 22. And it still takes a long time after, 2 years after, for the last letter to be there. So do you want to tell us a little bit about this timeline of these letters and how that worked and how you started doing this?
Yeah. When actually when was planning to write these letters, or after um, like when I got selected to this fellowship, I was thinking that I have this border 3-4 themes and I want to write letters on those 3-4 themes. But later when we were having conversations during the fellowship with the Reframe team, means I also realized, and through conversation we realized that it is not that easy to communicate everything from the Surya to its I theme wise, because the idea was about writing letters but through themes. So then those letters broke down, and while breaking down these letters, we the idea was also that how eventually what are some of the things Surya is communicating to his eye, and while communicating to eye, how he is telling things and revealing things about him eventually, not like on one go. Um,
Yeah.
and also, if once you start reading their eye, you see that in first few letter he just hesitating. He don't know what are the words he should use. He's just going back to those letters again. He had a few unfinished letters too in between, and that hesitation is also something which is showing in between. And then how one Surya get into rhythm while writing letters, but then he also decides, like on the day, whatever day he's writing with the specific dates, he decides that what are some of the things or some of the information he want to give today that might be inspired by incident happen in his life on that day or few days earlier, or sometimes just he is missing his eye in his life. And then those letters also talk about different things as a trans man, and what are some of the processes he is going through. That might be gender affirmative surgery, that might be changing his documents, like name change, that might be um, he's being in relationship with someone, that might be remembering his past partners, girlfriends, and talking about it. But or that might be even something very simple as eating ice cream and missing doodh ki sai or malai, what I was giving him during the in the childhood. Um, and those, like if when we are looking at those time period, it was also, I guess I will again thanks Reframe team, that this time period was also came in a way that how by writing these letters, how you can also see Surya's life evolving. And one thing was that like Surya also is evolving in his life. So some words which he is using in terms of language might be different in first letter and might be different in last letter. And like for example, I can also, and this was I was very much also unsure if I should use those words or not, or I should not use this word, because as a person who is also a trans person in the space, I wanted to be politically correct in terms of language. But also then when Surya is writing this, I also wanted to make sure that it should also be a voice of Surya, right? So like saying that ki female body, or for example saying things like sometime using pronouns by I or by Surya for his own body uh, was like feminine. And obviously I took rounds and rounds going back and revising it, sometime putting those in quotes, and then sometime no, I should not use this word, I should use different word, then I should use pursue as girl, or means like all those things.
Right,
And
right.
that, but I also wanted to be as honest as one can be in those writings, and I don't wanted that to be seen as like a struggle while writing those letters.
Mhm.
Another thing here was that also while revealing all different things in Surya's life, Surya is also sort of writing to I, who is living in village, who don't have idea that what Surya's life look like, where Surya is. She just know that Surya is my child, and
Hmm.
I don't like that how Surya is living his life. I wanted Surya to get married with one man and settle his life as she think that her
Hmm.
daughter should do. But Surya is always questioning it. But and again, then Surya also have this guilt of not being supporting to his mother. I'm just going on talking, I feel, but
No, no, go ahead.
yeah, Surya also have this guilt and like some sort of um, like unsettled feeling that I is important for him, and he knows that I is also going facing same kind of structural violence which Surya has faced. Like I is also living in that patriarchal house where Bapu is a patriarchal, where I have to go to farm every day. I have to sort of go through violence because of children's, that including Surya being not being confirming. And so Surya also have this guilt that Surya is conscious that this is happening with Surya because of the structure. So Surya is also conscious that how Surya can also help I. But I is also not very open to sort of take that help. And this letter I'm never reaching to I. So like
Yeah,
it is also like in some
yeah,
letters you will also able to see that I know that this letter is not reaching to you.
yeah,
I know you will never read these letters as
yeah.
it goes on. But that kind of feeling is also Surya going through. And while Surya is describing about each memory during the like childhood or when he was grown up, there's also like a subtleness of everyday life which talk about caste very strongly, which talk about rural life very strongly, and how it has inspired, not inspired, how it has built Surya, who is today he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you asked about timeline, but I felt like it will
Yeah.
also help us to understand a little bit more in the context.
No, no, absolutely. Because I was going to talk about some of these things which you already have. I think that is one of the things which is so brilliant about these letters, that because they span this time and Surya slowly starts talking, I think that what he is also learning and feeling, he's able to slowly put it down. And what is amazing is that he's also over time trying to, there is anger, there is lots of pain, but there's also compassion, and he sees the structuralness of the problems, but there's also very clearly it's located in the context. So you know the reality of what it means for Surya to be growing up in this village, in this kind of family. And so you know, whether it's caste, whether it's class, whether it's location, all those things, and he sees what happens to his mother as well and what has happened to him, and the impossibility of going back, but it all comes together in this wonderful manner. And actually he's able to talk about you know, the last there's such beautiful titles. I just want to read the last few. The Flight We Never Took, where Surya is imagining that, you know, today he is in a place where he flies and hears of a friend who he knows from childhood, who has been able to take her parents on a flight. And he said, I could have done that. But, that's never going to happen in my life because my parents and I cannot talk to each other. And I and I are in a space where we don't talk. And maybe, as you said earlier when you were reading, that maybe for the I forgetting that I existed, maybe that's the best way for her to live her life. And those are very difficult emotions, but I think that the way you've been able to write them, they are so amazing. It's really lovely. So the last three go: unspoken goodbye, apology, sense of closure. And the first one starts with unsaid coming out. So there is this very wonderful thing of it reading. And I think many, many people would actually, uh, resonate with a lot that you've written, but also appreciate what you've been able to put. So thank you. I think we have some time. Vani or Reframe people, shall we do some questions from the audience? I don't know if we have time for me to ask more questions.
Yeah, I think that what we can do is probably never mind, ignore the fact that my camera is not working, is that there are a few questions in the chat box. Can you see them, Charles?
Yeah.
Maybe you want to lead with those, and then if people can put up their hands, we are happy to have you ask your questions yourself, verbally and in person.
Okay. Sure. Shall I read the first? Well, the first question is, Diti, why choose young adult genre demography?
Which I think we sort of answered, but yeah.
Yeah, I think you have.
I think I did, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. For Vihaan, the question is, why did you choose this letter for today?
Yeah, this is difficult question. But I was lucky. I want to read everything, and I was very thinking that which letter I should choose. Yeah, I choose this letter because this letter was also giving a context that where the Surya has grown up. This letter was also talking about, in some ways, that how Surya is angry with I, but at the same time, Surya was acknowledging the fact that I had also faced similar sort of situations in her life. And it was also and it was still the tone was not very sorry or apologetic. It was firm, it
Yeah.
was strong, the emotions was very, very strong. Despite the acknowledgement that he was angry or little bit sad that I is not in touch with him, but he was still understanding that where I is coming from. That was the thing.
Yeah. Well, I think people are writing that we can sit and listen to everybody read their whole pieces, if that's what you would like to do.
In fact, the early questions, if I can jump in here, is how will we get to read all these wonderful, moving, and incisive writings? So I wrote back saying we're all waiting for them to get published. I hope the publishers on this or in the audience are listening. Will these be published as hard copies or ebooks? I'm like, can't tell. Time will tell.
Hopefully, everybody, each of the four people will find their publishers, and so that these writings are available to everybody. They really should be. They're brilliant. Sharvari, why did you choose a journal as a medium? Really liked it. I think you have talked about it. Do you want to say and add anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it, but maybe I'll add one thing that it was also the reason because in diary or in journal, when we write it is also cathartic, but it is also self-reflective. So I thought maybe that self-reflectiveness of it, I thought is important for this sort of writing. And also like that vulnerability which was also difficult, but I thought it was also important. And it is also the reason of the format.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, this is a question for everybody. What one new thing did they learn about themselves through this journey? And there's a second question, which is also for everybody. Do the writers find common threads between their writings with each other? So it's open to all of you. What's the one new thing that you learned about yourself, and do you find common threads with each other's writings?
Can I go first?
Yes.
Okay. So, one of the things that I learned while writing this is that usually I have this impulse like to not face the difficult thing, to run away from it. But while writing this, I had to relive some of the most difficult moments from my life and to also revisit certain memories and traumas. And I think in some way it did help in me understanding myself better and
Mhm.
also to understand why things happen the way they happen
Mm.
and how we have reached the point that we have as a nation and also why people behave the way they did. I think that was very useful. And while writing this, I discovered all of this. And as for the second question, yes, of course, while reading the pieces as I was of the different forms and content, uh, there's so many commonalities between them as well. They're all I think all the pieces have come out of this desire to be heard and I think all of us, in some shape or form, have been made to feel like we don't belong, that we are unworthy of occupying space, or that our stories aren't important enough to be told. And I think all four of these pieces are challenging those ideas and also trying to inspire other people to challenge these kind of notions where you're told that your story is not important enough or that it doesn't deserve to be told. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
I think it's the perfect moment to remember that with Banu, who, when she received a Booker, has said precisely the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Saying that there is no such thing called a small story. And I think that all of you have actually, and when people read the entire book, I think you'll see how much actually there is to learn and discover and understand actually in each of them. But sorry to bounce in. Anyone else want to respond to
Yes, please do.
this set of two questions?
Yeah, I think for the first question, I felt like this writing made me more courageous. I feel to share and to also uh, like write about vulnerable things and to show it to people. So it also, I think that was very new for me. And second thing, the common thread I felt, like Anam also said, belongingness and like finding belongingness and finding home also in this country. So I feel like this was a common thread between, like, yeah, among four of us.
Yeah. Diti and Vihaan, would you like to say something?
Okay, I'll go. So at one, I think what I learned about myself is that this is also when actually the reframe team told me that Tipu, see, like you can't um, just skirt through conflict, and not conflict in terms of like conflict happening externally, but internal conflict. You can't just like avoid it and run away, which I realize that I'm also that kind of person. I avoid conflict. So then my strategy was to actually write in how avoidance of conflict happens in Tiposi's life, which also then meant that I had to think through how I avoid conflict and what it does to me physically. So there are like instances where Tiposi feels like a pressure and the behind of their neck, etc. So like also then actually how avoidance of conflict has affected my mental health, and in turn my physical health, is something that I was able to realize uh, through this, which is then I had this all long conversation with my therapist. But I think in terms of a common thread, I think what Anam said about how her writing um, is a quest for home. I think that is true of all our writings also. Like in a way, we're all looking for some kind of home, some kind of a home, some kind of a place where we belong, some kind of a place where we feel safer, in a way, right? So I think, and I, and in a way, I think the writings have themselves, evolved to become a safe space,
Mm.
to hold our the conflicts, our emotions, the turmoil that all of us are, I think, trying to navigate through in our lives and in our writings.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That's really well said. Yes.
I think, like, I guess Madhura, who asked this question, is my colleague. And just want to say, she just being Madhura while asking this question. I think that what I learned while writing this piece, uh, I guess that this was the first time I was writing such a long thing. So I felt like, and it requires a lot of patience. And again, something which is very close to your heart, because I'm also a trans person. So it was very close to my heart. So I also learned that uh, my form of writing is also like, whenever I write in first person in general, but it was, for me, it was also difficult to make sure that, um, now I am struggling to answer, but like to make sure that how Surya is being a Surya as a character, not a Vihaan as a character. I also tried to little bit learn that, because I don't want it Surya to be Vihaan as it is. Um, the other part of it, I also learned that it can be also a coping mechanism for you. Whenever I was writing this letter, I was actually going through a lot of emotions. It felt like I'm just putting like a heavy stone on my heart and just writing it. It was not easy to finish writing this letter. It was very difficult. But I also learned that sometimes it is it is important to let it go. And this writing these letters and this process has helped me to just let everything come out on paper and feel um, khali.
Lovely. Yeah. Vani, there's one more question. Thank you, Vihaan. Which is from Anuj. Vani is
Yeah.
also asking if anybody wants to sort of live ask questions, so they can. But I'll read this one.
Yeah,
It was
please.
very creative and heartfelt writing, and it was a joy to listen, all four of you. Congratulations. Questions not specifically meant for anyone particular, but if any one of you would like to respond on these lines. So the first is, was there any mixing of your personal identity and the protagonist's identity? I think all of you have talked about it. Did you allow it purposefully or consciously avoided and made sure for characters to develop their completely separate identities, or was it a mix of both? I think much has been said around this question already. So, and the second is, was the overall writing process emotionally cathartic for you, or was it rather creating turbulence in your personal emotions during the writing process? I think this also many of you have talked about. If anybody wants to add something, please do. And if other people have more questions, please go ahead.
But meanwhile, maybe you can ask Shals or share a comment or observations or something while people are still thinking. I think we should give you a little bit more space since we have it.
No, I think, I mean, I've said a lot to all four of you, but I think that what I really appreciate is, you know, what exactly you've been talking about, that in the writing process, it is very difficult. And each one of you has had to confront that thing that if you want to make this meaningful, you have to put yourself into that. You have to deal with your own internal conflicts. You have to do the difficult task. And I think that is the thing about writing when it works, you know, that you do that. या फिर जैसे विहान ने बोला दिल पे पत्थर रख के सच्ची में लिखा है. And I think I see it in all your writings. I mean, it cannot be easy to write any of the things you're writing, whether it's Anam, you, or Sharvari, or Diti, or Vihaan, even if your forms are very different. You know, even for a story for children, when Diti is writing, they've had to confront that, these are the questions. You cannot run away. Even Portia has to confront them, but they also themselves have to do it. And I think that has been such a crucial thing. And I think a lot of the success in this writing lies in the way you have been able to take that from your lives, but also weave it in with dexterity into these forms that you have chosen. So I think that is a very great thing to be able to do, because and each one of you does it very differently. And I think for Vihaan, sort of the continuous question of, or whether it is for Sharvari and Diti, all three of them have creative protagonists. And for Sharvari and Vihaan, especially, to keep that distance, but also they know that so much of them is being there. Anam's, yours is a little different because you have chosen to write the personal essay where you are there, but then how you connect it to everybody else. You bring in families, friends, but you also bring in news, that one is reading. You also bring in collective spaces. So, and at the same time, you can see that each one of these things is not easy to write about. As I said to you, when you come to the last piece, the manuscript, I mean, as a reader, I really feel a slap of it, the powerlessness and the anger about, as a young, as a Muslim woman editor, the only Muslim in the organization, to be given a very strongly Hindutva manuscript, which is very anti-Muslim, which is very violent and abusive, to be given that to edit as part of work and what it means. So I think for each one of you that comes through. So what I really want to convey to everybody that sits read these works, but to see how effectively these writers have managed to really write these pieces and work through them. And I see that as a process. These are not first drafts. These are nth drafts. These are final pieces which have a lot of that work gone in. So yeah. Meanwhile,
so I think somebody called Dee has written in, and I think it might be a really beautiful note on which to sort of come towards a close. They say this was a beautiful discussion. As someone who is also trying to write a story of coming out with the backdrop of the partition, I'm struggling to continue. So this discussion was really helpful. So we keep having to encounter new situations in which there are more challenges, and then there's the challenge of actually putting it into words, and many of us struggle with that. And I want to say something that that not all of you, but a couple of our fellows, when they started out saying we really want to write, but we're not writers. And I think that has been proven to be not quite so true anymore for all of the four of you who have done sort of remarkable jobs, on these. And I do wait for the day that they are out in a more public domain for more people to be able to share and enter these worlds and to understand, what you all have done with this, with the kind of stories you want to tell, and how you have allowed us entry into them. Each of you. Is there anything any of you want to say in closing? As any of the four of you want to say?
Yes.
Yes, Anam.
I would like to thank Reframe for giving me this opportunity, because this is something that I've always wanted to work on, and finally find a platform for it, and to also work with people who are so welcoming and open to different ideas and to figuring it out together. And I'm so thankful to the team, because you all really helped to polish the rough edges, and also to introduce me to the works of so many brilliant, talented young people who I might not have come in contact with otherwise. So I'm extremely, extremely grateful for that. Yes, I just wanted to.
We're extremely grateful. Somebody on the question, some of the questions I answered said, how did you pick these 4 projects? And I wrote saying something like, through a very rigorous, difficult, and joyous process of selection. Because we had so many amazing proposals, but we are really glad we ended up with all of you. And yeah, anyone else want to say anything closing? And it doesn't have to be nice. Sharvari, I can't. What did you say?
No, I said you can go first, Vihaan, because he was also trying to say. Okay, I should go. Okay. So yeah, I also want to thank Reframe.
Yeah, don't let
And
us.
but no. I think I want to say that thank you for being patient with my writing because I know I have taken a lot of time because of a lot of things. But yeah, I really want to thank you for being patient, and it also made me a little less anxious before because I was very anxious that I'm getting late to finalize it. But yeah, and I really am grateful that I met all of you and your writing, like all three of you. Your writing was really beautiful and heartfelt and yeah, everything. So it was really nice uh, group of people. Thank you.
Uh, I also have similar things to say, but I really want to thank Reframe team. I like because this piece of work, which is Dear I think that it is very close to my heart, very close to my emotions, and I don't know if it was not Reframe or people who I know in certain capacity. If I would, I don't think I would have able to trust that play space to write this or even propose what I propose in the first place. Um, and also during the process, I was able to be very, very honest and vulnerable at same point of time. Um, because yeah, it is not that easy for me to. It was really very difficult for me to write Dear I. So I really want to thanks for that to Vani and also all the Reframe team. I also had given little bit trouble not taking some feedback, not listening to Reframe team whenever I felt. So that was also
But come on, disruption and resistance is something we all believe in.
yeah, yeah.
That's not a problem. I mean, isn't that part of the joy of it? So,
Yeah, yeah. And but also like that is the other part of it. Like you continuously keep saying that you are the writer, so you have full liberty to say no or say that, or you can not take feedback if you don't want to. So also that reassure that oh, I can keep what I can write things or keep things which I want to keep my way, rather than just going into that flow and taking feedback because I'm doing these things with someone or I'm just doing this thing with part of this fellowship, so I will have to take those feedback. That was not the process. It was like you are the writer and you have liberty to take it or not take it. So thank you for doing that.
Diti, please don't say anything nice about us. Now I'm going to
No,
weep.
no, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to say bad things.
Good. Good.
No, I mean, I almost gave up. I mean, this is Tiposi is somebody that I have been writing for the last 4 5 years, I think now. And, actually, I started writing Tiposi after because I was working with Kamladi, and I was inspired to write for younger people because of her, and I think when I initially started writing Tiposi, it was like a very fairy tale where there were fairies, and Junaki Miss was literally like a fairy in Tiposi's life. So so then she was like, like we need real. Why do you need to write a fairy tale? You need real people with real characters to be who and in today's world there is a possibility of having these real characters, which is when like the shift for Tiposi happened. And I think, I mean, on one hand, there is obviously the Reframe team, and completely resonate with all the things that people have said, but there's also like so many other people who have been there through this writing process. Like I have I there was this friend of ours, I think she's in the conversation right now, Joshita. Both Vihaan and I made her read this drafts, like every single draft of it, like 100 times. or like discuss. So my stories were either becoming very chirpy without like the complexity of emotions, or they were becoming very dark with every, like, people just dying in every story, which still happens quite a bit. But yeah, like a lot of, either it was going down one way or the other. But like, then there were like people who kept doing the pushing and the pulling, making sure that these stories became more complex. These stories became about people who, like, Tiposi's mother is probably the mother I wish I had. um
Yeah.
yeah, so then so I think like it also, I mean, thanks to the reframe thing, and thanks to like people who've been there, but also thanks to all the other people who've just agreed to read our like multiple drafts, and made sure that there was a time when I think Vani said कि नहीं, मतलब ऐसे तो नहीं चलेगा, like we need this is too simplistic. And then I was like, I just give up, like I can't do this. Then I think it somebody said about how if Tiposi is conflict averse, and you are conflict averse, maybe write that into the writing, right? Like it is a young person living amidst a lot of conflict, so it is okay for this person to have that kind of a personality. And then how do you, but don't, how do you bring that nuance in? So like I think it is also it takes a village to bring up a child, and it takes a village to write a book. I think this is
Actually, you
Yeah,
stole the
but
words out of my thing, because I know that both of you were getting very valuable feedback from friends who know you well and who know what you were trying to achieve. And really, I want to use this opportunity to thank them, because we are formally part of that process and invested in it. But for everyone to come together to do that, and and for all of us to come together to celebrate this moment is all. I mean, we don't do anything without community of our kind, and I think that that's what keeps us all going in these terrible, terrible times. you know so I'm just
Yes,
going to
let's
read yeah.
acknowledge that writing is not the lonely process. There is parts of it which are very lonely, but you know what? Writing is not that great male writer sitting in his, fabulous villa being catered to writing. No, writing is all of us, writing where we are in our circumstances and with people. So we do some work alone, and then we also but bring people in. So yes, that's a good thing about, what all of us have learned about writing over time.
So there are a couple of other comments, and one which says, loved hearing the conversation and getting a little sneak peek into how the writers approach their work. Look forward to reading the final pieces when they come out. There's one question for you, Vihaan. I thought it was saying how did you choose your characters' names? But I think that's a longer conversation, which you might want do you want to answer that? Or do you want to just, do any
I
of you want to answer that?
I can
In
just
particular, yeah, Surya and Tiposi, I think maybe those two.
Yeah, for Surya, because trans person do choose name for themselves, right? So if you if when you read Dear I, you will find Surya writing just yes as a initial, and then eventually choose his name. So there is also one whole letter which talk about why Surya choose Surya's name. So I will keep it there. Whenever the publisher will publish it, you can read it.
Diti, you want to talk about Tiposi?
it's a very short. I really like the name Tiposi. Tiposi means the tailor bird in Assamese. And for me, like, it is it's a cutesy name, but also it stays because there is this young person who's trying to weave their life, which is why the name becomes significant.
Very nice.
Initially, it was called Tiposi's Tapestry, which the reframe team was not very um, happy about. So then I mean, I also
We were like,
agree.
what? Yeah, I mean, we're like, what tapestry? Like, what's going on? Tiposi's playing football. So, so Ima's iPhone says more power to all the writers and to Reframe for centering voices that need to be heard. So I think this sounds like the perfect note to, I really wish, now I'm really even more than ever wishing we were all physically in the same place. This is the moment for a real physical hug and a drink together, but both of which in abeyance, and we'll do it in parts. But I really want to thank all of you, as I said in the beginning, for allowing us to be part of the process. It's all very well for us to be supportive and all that, but you had to let us in. You had to let us in through that window or that door. And you trusted us with that. And that has meant a lot to us. And that has been for us through our entire journey, the most precious part of being with filmmakers, writers, podcasters, whoever, And as a filmmaker myself, I know how difficult that process can be. So what it means to have somebody with you, I think it's meant a lot. And others in the team have worked as hard with a lot of other people. So it's something that we really treasure. And so thanks a lot to all of you. Very, very big thanks and hug to Shals for being here for this conversation, for giving us feedback, for just being here, and for being able to tease out this conversation the way you did, and
Thank you.
with soft love and sharp politics, always a great combination. And so yeah, and a very, very big thank you to all the friends who are here and been part of this entirely rich and gorgeous evening. So thanks a lot, and Shabba Khair.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.